Well, it's here. The housing crash is finally here. Not really, it's not. But as we see with rising interest rates, the housing market, the prices in different markets and nationally is stabilizing. Things are slowing down a little bit and things are moving to the balanced market that the way it always should be. Again, the prices will always be higher than 2019 levels, which is a huge bummer, but we'll take it. But today I want to discuss why I like buyer's market more than seller's market. I know realtors they're gonna kill me, they're after me already, but it's worth talking about it. If you're a home buyer, this is a video for you. I'll show you why a buyer's market is better than seller's market, or if you're a realtor who you want to have a more objective look at the market, this video is for you as well. But what happened? Why are we here? Well, I made a video discussing the market, what are the supply and demand factors that led to this. You can watch it here. But in short, with COVID, a decision was made to lock down the economy, and that has a lot of consequences. And in some states, we saw prolonged lockdown. Whether you think it's right or wrong, closing down the economy for long periods of time, especially in vital industries like manufacturing and supply chain, is essentially forcing a depression into our economy. So in an effort to jumpstart the economy again, the Fed performed the biggest CPR in our economy that we've ever seen before. That is, the printing machine is on again. Therefore, we see that 80% of our currency, US dollar, was printed since 2020. And this is a global dollar supply, I might add. So obviously, Keynes' soul is among us, especially our friends at the Fed, and steering the economy once again was in full effect. And as we learned from 2008 again, whenever there's a huge liquidity dump into the economy, the money always goes upwards to the rich. And per usual, unfortunately, we have a case yet again that the government gets to choose winners and losers. Now, there's another unintended consequences, as we all know, if you have such a liquidity dump and with all that cash into the economy while you still have very critical supply chain and manufacturing issues stemming from the lockdowns, inflation, or if you want to call it super inflation, is hitting us. Inflation hits us as we know it, and it has been very significant. But as we explained, a lot of factors followed that, and the housing market went crazy. I explained that in the housing market video, but now this is an update to that video in an attempt to curb the housing market, to slow it down, to hopefully make it go away from this crazy market that there is. Which, by the way, Fit disagrees with every realtor out there who says, well, this is a normal market. This has to be a normal market. We like the market, and there's nothing wrong with that economically because of supply and demand, which I'm sure of most of them don't really understand. But Fit comes in and disagrees. It says it's not a normal market. Since we steered the market to this mess, we're gonna steer it back to another mess. And Fed yet again finally used the biggest and baddest weapon so far, and they turned the knobs and increased interest rates. With the change in interest rates, you have a situation where the Fed says, we want now at this point, a year or two before we make the decision to dump all this cash into the economy, that we want to lower liquidity, lower the money supply by making money cost more, essentially. So across the board, different lenders, especially mortgage lenders, use that as a guideline and say, well, if the Fed wants less cash in circulation, cost of money is higher. For our mortgage products, we want to increase the interest rates for that as well. And that's why you see interest rates going from dirt cheap at 2%, 1.8%, going up to now 6.5%. Again, what are the consequences of this action? The consequence, as we said, is you have less money in circulation, less lending options that are so cheap, because the Fed's philosophy is that if we increase the cost of money, if the cost of borrowing money is higher than ever, then there will be less people borrowing money. So there will be less small business loans, less venture capital and investment funds in circulation, and also less mortgages. Therefore, if not a lot of people can get mortgages, not a lot of people will buy houses, and therefore the demand will come down and the market will cool off. Well, this had another effect. Some of the metrics for real estate is actually changing, meaning number of showings going down, days in the market going up, number of competitive multi-offers for each property is going down, and also with fear of inflation, prediction of prices going down, number of cash offers going down, and now more sellers who weren't sure about putting their houses on the market, who say that, okay, let the prices keep going up so we can sell it at a higher price, are facing with a panic sell, which is a self-fulfilling prophecy, meaning sellers say, hey, prices are going down because demand is low, we're going to list our property. So now you have a situation where you have more supplies than ever, and actually that contributes to overall housing prices going down. Again, it's different from market to market, less so unfortunately down here in Florida, more so in other states, but it's also an accelerator. Now that you know what's happening, I want to tell you why I like the buyer's market more than the seller's market. Let's go. Do I prefer a buyer's market or a seller's market? Obviously, I do prefer a buyer's market for these reasons. Number one is that you have a very healthy supply and demand, meaning that the demand for a market is usually shifts through times and through different economic uncertainties, but then if you have a healthy supply, and in the buyer's market there's usually a really good surplus. So when it comes to market changes, demand changes, and people having different opinions about it, you can just always have enough supply to answer for that bump in demand. So that's always good. You don't have a problem that you have now when there is a little bit of a seller's market or is a balanced market, and suddenly market shifts dramatically because you don't have any surplus. Because in a buyer's market there's usually a surplus, and that is good because that answers for a potential increase for demand. Number two is that usually in a buyer's market, the quality of assets, which in this case is housing, increases, which is fantastic, because what you have here is in times when market factors trumps internal characteristics of an asset, which we discussed in the previous video, it's not good. Yes, you can say, and a lot of realtors in being very ignorant say like, oh, if someone's willing to pay for it, that's what it's worth. Yes, economically, yes, but then you have a situation where you have, like down here in Florida, where you have a lot of subpar houses. They're terrible. There's a lot of functional and design obsolescence. They're not really good properties, and they sell for high, and you end up paying a lot for a really bad asset just because people want it. And I love you all, but American consumer is really jittery. FOMO is at its all-time high. Everything that COVID taught us is that when it comes to choosing buy versus no buy, you buy. And American consumers are willing to get into enormous amount of debt, financially be stretched to the max to buy something. Again, it could be toilet papers, or it could be hand sanitizers, or even houses, just to have something. So I don't trust the market to show me the value of an asset. They are willing to pay too much for a really bad product. So when it comes to a buyer market, you don't have this problem, because you are in a scenario where for you to sell your property, you have to do some upkeep, you have to improve the property, renovate it, seller concessions. There are things that can help buyers purchase houses, especially first-time home buyers. Number three is following number two, which is you have this situation where you are basically buying the properties and the quality increases. Again, if you're wanting to live in a home in a buyer's market, you have more options, you have more leverage to choose a home that you really love. You don't go out of desperation to buy the first thing that's available, so you have a roof over your head. You have more options, you have more leverage. It's a big decision, and unlike what we've seen since 2020, you shouldn't have this situation where a lot of families are in desperation to find a house. In a buyer's market, they have option, they have leverage, they deserve that more than sellers do, because sellers are not selling just because they want to have a roof over their head. They're selling an asset. They're probably selling it given that there's a certain level of capital gain, or they're moving on to bigger and better things, and it's a more of a sharks and minnows situation, because they have the asset, they have the leverage already, so it's an unnatural transaction. What balances the scale is a buyer's market. When buyers have more options, sellers are actually looking to chase and sell buyers, which is how it should be. You shouldn't be a buyer who spends hundreds of thousands of dollars purchasing the biggest asset of your life, which means you go under enormous amount of debt, you go under enormous amount of pressure to buy this, and you have to go and chase sellers. That's very unbalanced. In an unbalanced transaction in and of itself, that's what helps keep sellers or selling agents humble.